View from the Gutters, episode 114. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Rage of Ultron, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 101.41.
All right, are we ready to go?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Yeah.
All right. View from the Gutters, episode 114. I'm Tobiah Panshin.
I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Brant Gillihan-Eddy. We're going in the wrong direction.
We are going in the wrong direction.
Could you
No,
Kayleigh,
stop. I'm Kayleigh Fleeman.
Oh my god.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
And we have to start over now.
No.
No, we'll leave
No.
it. Fuck it. No
When have
retakes.
we ever redone
And when did
something?
you
Never.
start saying the episode numbers?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And why are we going in a different direction?
Just because that's what happened. We just roll with it. It's improv.
I'm
always
changing it up. I'm playing the wild card tonight because Joe isn't here.
Yeah. Just roll with it. It's improv.
I'm not good at improv.
Well, get better.
I can't. I'm not funny.
That's true.
Here's some
Yeah.
non-improv for you. Thank you for
Well,
Thank you Thank you to tonight's episode sponsors for sponsoring this episode.
hooray.
Thank you, Addison Appleby, Tony Cortero, and Brian May.
Hooray.
I was thinking for a minute there we would have to just leave that pause and then have to insert the really fake computer voice. Addison Appleby.
We could do that.
That would be
Tony.
perfect. No, definitely do that.
Okay, well, now we can't because I said that I was going to do it on the episode, which means that later while I'm editing, I'll be like, I'm not doing that. Fuck you.
Who the fuck said that?
Fuck you, other me. You are wrong. There's no way I'm doing that.
But if it was the same you that made warm coffee for you for later,
No, that's a different past me. It's an alternate universe past me.
it must be really hard to deal with yourself.
Yeah, I'm a real asshole. Anyway, tonight's episode, we are talking about the original graphic novel, Rage of Ultron.
Now,
Written by Rick Remender and illustrated by Jerome Opeña and others. And Toby.
I think the first question that we have to answer is, how do you pronounce the acronym OGN? I say Ogan.
Yeah.
I say
know.
I say original graphic novel every time. It is not an abbreviation. No, I pull a Rachel Ray and I'm like, OGN, original graphic novel. And it's like, why the fuck did you shorten it in the first place? If you're just going to say the full word every time, kill yourself. I hate you. Get off my fucking Triscuit box.
Ray is a
beautiful.
Sweetheart.
I hate her.
No, she's
on my
adorable.
Triscuit box and I don't like it.
Why do you like Triscuits?
Because they're fantastic.
They're gross.
They're so
shitty
good.
wheat thins.
No, they're... What? They taste nothing like wheat thins.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, wow. I guess we're just getting right into it tonight.
They're nothing like a wheat thin. You can like both. It's not like Cheez-Its and Cheese Nips where they're basically the same product.
Wow.
My mom would always like, I got wheat thins, and then there'd be Triscuits. So Triscuits are disgusting to me.
They're not even
That's your,
close to the
that's your
same.
mom's fault.
Triscuits
Yeah.
are better with soft cheese.
No, wheat thins are better with soft cheese. Everything's better.
Everything's better with soft
Don't
cheese.
bring your mother issues into shredded wheat snacks.
Wait. Can we revoke this whole Kayleigh equal voting member
Yeah.
thing now? This whole weird wheat thin
No,
Triscuit thing has just blown my goddamn mind.
Out of control.
Too late. I've been unionized.
Anyway.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Obama. Okay.
Yeah.
I pitched Rage of Ultron.
Yes, you did.
Specifically because I felt incredibly conflicted about
Yeah.
it.
As
I love Rick
you
Remender's
should have
writing.
been.
Yes.
I love Jerome Opeña's art and Dean White's colors.
Yes.
All very beautiful things. All elegantly done in this story. And yet,
Somehow.
the first issue in the top of my mind is where exactly this fits in continuity, if at all.
I can't see a place that it does.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you look at the character designs and the people who are on the team, you've
Yeah.
got Sam Wilson as Captain America.
Sabretooth's on the Avengers.
Sabretooth is on the
Thor,
Avengers.
Goddess of Thunder.
Thor, Goddess of Thunder.
Vision has his new character design.
Right.
But Janet Van Dyne is there, even though she's kidnapped by Havoc at the end of Axis, where all of these characters kind of come onto the team.
Yeah.
So it sort of happens after Axis, but not exactly.
Right.
But given the way that the story ends, it doesn't feel like it really stands on its own as a full and complete story, because it ends on this very indefinite note where you feel like this was all set up for things to come.
Can I ask a question before?
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if we could real quick go around the room and everyone kind of give voice to how much Avengers they've read, like long term.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Because I'd be interested to see who has what impressions based on their amount of Avengersness.
I have a kind of a weird mix, I guess, because I didn't read very much Avengers as a kid. It was very stodgy in my mind, not nearly as interesting as those cool kids, the X-Men or Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So a lot of Avengers, it was either like very big events like Onslaught, or things that I've picked up in the last, let's say, 10 to 12 years.
So kind of post-disassembled.
Yeah. Actually, I would say even post, like, Heroic Age on is probably where I've done my most solid reading, plus kind of going back and picking up things after the fact. Like, we read Avengers Forever.
Right.
I've read everything since Disassembled.
Okay.
I know there's probably some Avengers stuff that I've read. I know I've read Forever. I'm trying to think of if there's other just like graphic novel collections. I think there's one with Kang. There's like a Kang War one.
Oh, well, not Avengers Forever, but the are you talking about the Heroic Age one where he shows up?
It's older. It's like a trade. It's like in those Marvel Presents trades, the like green spined ones. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
I'm trying to remember if that's
writing.
just like a best of like Kang shows
It
up,
might
or
be.
if there was actually an event. I can't
Wasn't there one
remember.
called like Forever War or something like
Yeah.
that?
So-
I also read Kree Skrull War, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, Secret Wars, events that have the Avengers in them, like
Right.
Infinity Gauntlet, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But I would not call myself like an Avengers expert or even like knowledgeable really on Avengers characters other than who has been an Avenger in the modern age.
Okay.
If you asked me what was up with like Jack of Hearts, I would not know.
I think there are people who read Avengers for a long time and still didn't know what was up with Jack of Hearts.
What about you, Kayleigh?
I really haven't read anything that was explicitly Avengers.
Did you? Oh, sorry.
Like I've read bits and pieces of those who are on the Avengers that I care about, like Thor and
Hawkeye.
yeah, things like that.
You
But
read some She-Hulk.
Yeah, She-Hulk was good. I enjoyed that one. But as far as like the Avengers go, I only very recently figured out that there was a slightly cohesive timeline that you could actually follow. And I plan on reading House of M, but
Did you read your Ultron primer we were talking about?
yes, I did.
Interesting.
What about
An
you,
Ultron
Cade?
primer?
Oh yeah. Well, was it Friday?
Yeah.
We were talking, and Kayleigh was making a comment about not knowing much about Ultron, and I think it was IO9. I said had just released an article that was like, here's all the crazy stuff. Like, here are the big major beats about Ultron since he was created. Since obviously Age of Ultron's coming out in the theaters. So
Yeah, I don't really know much about Ultron at all. Okay, so my Avengers experience is West Coast.
yeah.
Okay, so my very first
Goliath.
comic ever when I was a kid was Avengers number 258, which has nothing to do with most of the Avengers stuff I read growing up, but that was my first comic. For me, the two original, well, not original, but original in my mind Avengers are Wonder Man and Beast. Those were my two favorites. Then I went
Must be
with
really mad about how they treat Wonder Man these days. That poor guy.
Yeah.
So then I went without reading.
Or does he?
He's inside Rogue.
Yeah. Okay. That's
that's
what I
right.
was like.
That's right.
I just remembered that. Sorry, spoilers, everyone that's reading Uncanny Avengers. Is that where that is?
Yeah.
I didn't know he's been referenced in 10 or so years.
Oh yeah, he's shown
all
up.
over the place.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, he
that's
fell in
kind
love
of
with the Scarlet
cool.
Witch and then got absorbed into Rogue, and now he's stuck as part of her.
And that was after being a pro-registration douchebag for a while, attempting to shut down the Heroic Age Avengers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was implications there. I don't know if it was fully resolved that he may have been controlled at that point.
Yeah, he was acting kind of crazy.
Yeah. So there was all kinds of weird stuff with him. But
Okay.
you were saying?
Oh, then I didn't read Avengers for a long time until the build-up to 500 came around. And I got really on board with that. I have all the disassembled trades. The new Avengers #1, I have all the variant covers from 2005. I've got the whole layout of variant covers where they matched up
Oh yeah.
of
yeah.
1 through 9. No, 1 through 6. And then I have 7, 8, and 9 that have like the Sentry stuff, because the Sentry has always been one of my favorite characters. And then I didn't go for reading Avengers again for quite a while, and it's just been bits and pieces since then. So I really didn't know what was going on for some of the time in this book. But Beast was in the first 4 pages, and I loved that.
So I know that you're kind of like the Avengers guy as far as our little group is concerned.
I mean, kind of. So I've done a lot. So one of my first comics was Operation Galactic Storm #2 or 3, which I think I've referred to before because it had an amazing splash page with Eric Masterson yelling, "It's hammer time!" And using living lightning as a actual lightning bolt against Gladiator, which at the time blew my mind. Because not only was it an awesome moment on page, but then living lightning and the rest of the Avengers were like, "What the hell is your problem?" And he's like, "Hey, I just solved a problem here. You can't blame me that was the only lightning bolt I could find." So yeah, like I did, Kree Skrull with Secret Wars, a bunch of separate Kang stuff. Avengers Forever is like in my top 10 comics of all time. At one point I had read Avengers Forever, then went back and read a bunch of the stuff that was Avengers Forever supposedly fixed because it was all screwed up. Pretty much for who I can't remember who it was that came on right before Bendis started doing Disassembled. Jeff Johns. So I got into Avengers when Jeff Johns actually, like in a solid way, because that was right around the time I think I'd started working in one of the comic book stores, or in the comic book store that I'd been working at off and on. And then I pretty much kept consistent through about 2012. And then for the last couple of years, my stuff's been spotty. So like I've kept up on like Young Avengers, Avengers Academy, the Children's Crusade, like a lot of the tertiary stuff and the big events, but I haven't read all of the Uncanny Avengers stuff and all that because I'm on like a 16-month backlog with Marvel Comics at this point.
I've been following it very closely with Hickman's run on Avengers, Remender on Uncanny Avengers, and then all of the like Avengers Arena and
so like I read all that.
Like,
yeah,
I've really gotten into it in the last like 2 and 3 years.
Yeah, I've read a lot of the Avengers Arena, Avengers Academy, all that stuff I've read, but I haven't read the main books.
But was there a specific point that you wanted to make based on that?
So the couple of big reasons that I was wondering about this is that I certainly see what you're talking about as far as there being this like, when is this? And I have some thoughts about that. But I also was wondering how people would feel about it as far as its representation of Hank Pym in general. Because I feel like depending on what your exposure to the Avengers is, you may have wildly separate opinions about who Hank Pym is and what he's like and whether or not this is a fair treatment of him or whatever.
And that's kind of the thing. The second point that I wanted to get into, aside from the continuity issues, is that from a story perspective, this left me feeling really cold. It's like, okay, Ultron shows up. He takes over a planet. We get robo-zombies, which we've seen 1,000 times before. He grabs a planet and brings it to Earth with like nobody noticing because it's invisible. And fight. And it kind of, I was like, okay, this feels very cookie cutter. What was really interesting to me was the characters. That this feels like a Hank Pym, Ultron, Vision character study, very deeply probing into the nature of their relationship as father, son, and grandson. and about the relationships between fathers and sons and between generations.
And creators and like their creation.
Absolutely. And that was really interesting to me. Talking to my brother Adam about it, he suggested that it was similar to kind of a subgenre within fan fiction of this idea of taking characters and placing them into events where there's no way that they could have ever interacted or would be in this situation in the main story. Like, it doesn't fit anywhere into continuity. It's just the idea of, I'm going to put these characters into this situation and see how they interact, because I want to understand or represent a particular relationship between them. And that to him, because he was reading this as well, this story feels like that. Like, this isn't part of continuity in any way. It's just, we're putting these characters together in a particular situation and seeing how they interact. And on that level, it was interesting to me. But the one problem that I had even with that is that Hank Pym is being characterized very differently from the way that he's been characterized recently in comics. Yes. So I feel very conflicted about this. There are things that I love about this story. There are things that made me feel just kind of like, what is even the point of this? And so I wanted to get your guys' reaction. What did you think about it?
Yeah, so I
can see the forest of words in your Lisa Frank notebook.
Yeah, that I'm adding to as you guys are talking to. So having not read anything about Ultron and not a lot about Hank Pym, this actually made me care for Hank Pym in a way that I never had, because everything that I've read about Hank Pym, he's an abusive asshole. And I just don't have any attachment to him. And I do want to pick up the latest Ant-Man run because it seems like a reinvention of the character.
Hank's not
in that.
Oh, he's
at
not.
all.
No. Oh, well, never mind.
That is
Hank Pym's still an asshole then. There you go.
If you want a recent Hank Pym story, you want to pick up Avengers AI.
Yes.
Okay.
Which got very mixed opinions.
Okay.
And I would actually be interested to know what you think about that.
Okay. I will write that down.
But that story, in terms of its representation of Hank Pym, is kind of a 180 degree turn from this. Because in this, he's like 100% like, robots are machines, period. Mm-hmm. You turn them off, you turn them on, you turn them off. It doesn't matter. It's a tool. And in Avengers AI, he's like, no, man, they're all alive. Like, and it's very much about the living nature of artificial intelligence and this like whole war/interaction with Hank Pym and the Vision and this like entire community of AI that are living in these servers like hidden around the world. It's a really interesting story, although I understand why people are kind of split on it.
I think sorry to interrupt Kayleigh, but I think one of the main problems with Hank Pym as a character is that he has kind of Wonder Woman syndrome, where anyone that comes on the book decides they have a brand new take on Hank Pym.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really feels like every time you read a Hank Pym story, you're reading a new character. I had that problem when he was in The Initiative.
Yep.
I was like, this Hank Pym is totally different than anything I've seen before, and it was confusing. So like I get that feeling that in a lot of books, people are trying to quote unquote fix Hank Pym, and like I don't know that he ever really needed to be fixed.
Right.
So
and the most recent before this characterization that they gave him was him going, I'm bipolar. Mm-hmm. Like I have an honest like mental ailment. And I'm learning how to deal with being a bipolar superhero and manage my manic fits and my depressive stages.
And he was Yellow Jacket in this, like he was in Avengers Forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and there's also the issue of, I mean, because the thing that kind of got to me was that, and I mean, I guess it could fit. Sorry, my head's kind of all of a sudden pinballing. You know, the arc that I kind of felt like the weird tone is that in Avengers Academy, like he's shown like grappling with kind of being this thing, but also kind of coming full circle, especially post Civil War, where some of the characterization of him was that like he felt like he was right to be on the pro registration side, but ultimately did things that he didn't like that he was responsible for again. But that one of his whole character arcs in Avengers Academy was like, this is who I am, these are the mistakes I've made, but I can make up for that by being a steward of the next generation. And kind of like, he was kind of more forward looking and like brighter and more optimistic than he had been characterized for a long time, which actually was a callback to some of his characterization back in the beginning when he was like bright-eyed scientist Hank Pym, trying to like, you know, make things and be Hank Pym. And so to suddenly have like the interior monologue where he's like, no one respects me, no one listens to me, it's kind of like, ooh. But you're right that's very telling, Cade. You're right that it's telling that he was in the Yellow Jacket costume, because that was part of his whole beef when he was in the Yellow Jacket costume, was that, Hank Pym's a weakling. Well, especially when he didn't admit that he was Hank Pym. He's like, Hank Pym's a weakling. Why listen to that loser? Like, so yeah, interesting threads. And of course, Marvel refuses to acknowledge whether this is officially in continuity or not. Presumably because they want... I double-checked it because I'd run across the article, but Axel Alonso is on record as, it will make sense in time. Which speaks even more to the fact that this might have been an original graphic novel, but it clearly is more like the beginning of... Not an event... It reminds me of Siege, right? Like
4-issue event.
Yeah, you know, like 160 pages or 120 pages, but basically sets the new tone and resets the universe to kind of be understood in. And then, of course, what I also felt was interesting is that, is this a good or a bad sign, depending on your opinion, of what Secret Wars might mean as far as the strictness of continuity? Because my impression from reading this is they launch Ultron during his first major attempt to take over. It takes him that long to land on Titan. So, you know, however long that is in Marvel sliding continuity, but that long enough that major events have happened and we've got the new set of Avengers and Hank Pym's gone through all these things and has
it's
created...
been a long time since Beast was on the Avengers.
Right. I mean, in real
he's
time...
on it now.
Oh.
Right, but so one of the big things that is that...
No, it was the Heroic Age. Sorry, it was the last time he was on it.
He was on the Heroic Age, but the banter specifically had that very, like, 70... He was on in the 70s, right? Or the early 80s?
Yeah, 70s.
Yeah.
Had that banterish to it, right? Like, especially the thing that was most telling to me was the exchanges between Hawkeye and Beast, because Hawkeye quips, but not like that anymore, where he's more, you know...
Yeah,
like,
no, that was absolutely their 80s appearances.
Yeah.
Before the West...
So my walk away was that, okay, so he's launched into space in 81, and now he lands on Titan in 2014. So if I take that as a strict sense of continuity, then all the other appearances of Ultron that have happened in regular continuity in Marvel Comics now are assumed to not have happened.
I was operating under the assumption that Ultron is one of those characters, because he's an AI, who just makes copies of himself and seeds them all over the place. So they shot that Ultron into space, and a different fragment of him that was dormant on some server somewhere popped up and it was like, I'm Ultron! And all those other appearances have still happened.
Yeah. Well,
and this is some much older Ultron who's been like dormant, but is now popping up again.
Yeah, maybe.
They have Hank Pym says specifically, like, he keeps coming back, and we need to take him out for good, and that's sort of the whole issue. And so I don't think that they're erasing everything else that's happened, because they are acknowledging that they have happened.
Well, I guess that's the thing, is that it's left so vague, like it feels like intentionally, so that you can be like, is this the last time he showed up, or is it or has he shown up a bunch of times, or how many times has he shown up? Well, who knows?
It seems to be trying to have it all the ways.
Right.
Well, and yet none of the ways, because the thing is that I like about this, and what I like about kind of Elseworld stories, and what I like about sort of out of continuity Batman stories and stuff, is it's not rigidly important what's specifically come before or after, unless a specific character shows up. So, like, if Oracle shows up, you go, okay, things X, Y, and Z probably have happened. But we don't know, because that's less important to the story than this. And I like that you use the term, like, character piece.
Yeah.
Like, this character piece is what's important. And the continuity is just, like, loosely, very vaguely relevant to the story. Like, what you need to know are the things that we tell you in this story. If you happen to know a bunch of other stuff, Great. Some of that may or may not have happened. But what's important is the examination between these three characters. And I agree with you that the hardest part, well, I don't know that you think this is the hardest part. The hardest part for me is I don't want to say mischaracterization of Hank Pym, but the new characterization of Hank Pym.
Sure.
Because I had a hard time understanding like where this came from. It felt very reactionary, where he's like, no, I'm done thinking about robots as being alive.
Right, like something
big
thing
happened
to him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, nope, I'm done. They're on or they're off. I'm not killing them. I don't care. And I wanted to know what happened, and I thought that was going to be part of the story. And when it wasn't, I was like, I feel like I'm missing something.
Have you guys read Age of Ultron yet?
No.
From a few years ago?
Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Okay. Nothing in that spoke to being like the thing that would make Hank Pym like
No,
explicitly.
and that story was very badly done.
Okay.
I'm just going to throw out a spoiler warning for anybody who really wants to read Age of Ultron. Skip like 30 seconds ahead. So basically there's a whole bunch of time hugger mugger with like, Ultron killed all the Avengers and took over the world. And then they like go back in time and rewrite time and all that. And at the end, they basically tell Hank Pym, like, insert this dormant piece of code into Ultron when you're first designing him that will shut him off at this certain time, and then wipe your brain so that you don't know that you did it. So that when Ultron goes to kill all the Avengers when he's going to take over the world, instead he like dies.
So why not? Which begs the question: why not just tell him don't make Ultron?
Well, that's what they did. Is they killed him before he could make Ultron, and it like completely fucked over everything.
I see.
And they were like, Ultron has to be invented. He has to do all of these things that he did, or else it's going to fuck up time. So we're going to have you put in this piece of code so that he'll do all of these terrible things up to this point.
Except this terrible
shut
thing that's
down.
important to this story.
Right. Like
Okay.
I said, not very well done.
Okay.
I hate time
So
travel.
what I felt
Yeah, time travel
Unless
is
there's
awful.
Kane.
reading this story, not knowing a lot about Hank Pym and not knowing a lot about the Avengers, I felt like there was a lot of character development that happened off panel, and reading it, I felt like I had a really good idea of Hank Pym's beliefs before this comic, and then was able to understand his switch. Like, it felt natural to me reading it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that much about him.
Yeah.
So,
Like, I don't think the characterization was, like, wavered in the story. It's just, like, this in relation to everything else I've ever read feels different. In the same way that, like, I don't know, if you read a Batman story and he was suddenly, like, out in the daytime and smiling and hanging out with the mayor of Gotham, you would be like, when did that happen? Like,
the
it's,
60s?
Yeah, it's like, it's not wrong. It's just, like, I feel like I missed something.
Right.
And that's, a lot of this book felt like I missed something.
Yeah, I got mad at Marvel continuity when I was reading this book.
And I really try to ignore continuity stuff, especially with Marvel, because the sliding timeline creates so many more problems than it solves, that I just, like, there's a certain amount that you have to just forgive in a weird way if you want to enjoy some of these, I think.
Yeah, I feel like there's some stories that... I don't want to phrase this. There are stories that ignore it, and there are stories that accept it. There are stories that ignore it well and ignore it badly. There are stories that accept it well and accept it badly. This felt like a story that accepted it badly to me, I guess. Or I guess here's what if this was an original graphic novel, you would expect it to be self-contained. I think we've already said that. But it's clearly not intended to be. I feel like this thing is complete, like, I honestly feel like this was the first thing that Marvel slid on the table to be like, continuity's gonna be bonkers, people. You don't even know what's gonna happen in the Secret Wars. And it's like, that's cool. And that you've gotten people on board to make stories like this is awesome. But, like, you don't end with, spoiler alert, you don't end with Hank Pym and Ultron being together with a human heart and an adamantine body as one entity floating through space in the fetal position, no less. Unless you're trying to say, and then the new status quo.
Exactly. Like, this story only works if something follows it.
Right.
And if nothing ever follows from this, I'm going to feel like that was a very lackluster ending.
I felt it kind of was in and of itself to begin with.
Well,
Maybe.
I feel like if there's Rage of Ultron 2 or whatever, like there's a follow-up where...
Or the new Ultron Forever
organic,
or
half machine, Hanktron shows up again in the future, and like there's another story that's based on this. Like, I feel like this is a really great base for another story after it. But as the end of a self-contained story, it feels sort of, it's like, I don't even quite know how to phrase it, but almost like one of those Twilight Zones, like dun 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 endings, like, oh, he's got a human heart now, and I'm like, yeah, but then what?
Well, and my thoughts on that are as follows. I think that there's a certain amount of precedent in the big two superhero continuity that states that there is no ending to any story. It doesn't matter if the author intended there to be an ending to the story or not. That story is still open to investigation. Kingdom Come, self-contained, Alex Ross, Mark Waid wrote this book, beginning, middle, and end, absolutely open shut, alternate future. Except when someone else comes along later and is like, actually, that's a different Earth, and so now we're going to fold that into the main continuity of JSA. So even if you intended it to have an ending, like, there is no finality in comic books. And so I wonder if this is Marvel saying, like, this is how we're going to do comics now. We're going to tell you a cool story, but at the end, we're not closing any doors, because closing doors only limits our creativity as a company that explores universes, because that's what they just watched DC do.
Especially when 15 years ago Hank Pym was dead.
Well, yeah, and they just watched DC like close massive doors on a lot of continuity and then go, well, shit, now we want to play with that again, and saw them have to like hacksaw through the locks they put on the door to the old stuff.
So for me, there's a difference between a finality and a cliffhanger, right? Like Kingdom Come ends in a way where you walk away and you go, there could be more, but this is self-contained and I feel satisfied. This feels like, to me, like there are hooks in it that are kind of like, this doesn't, it's like, it felt like reading book 2 of 3.
Yeah, but I feel like that's what comic books, especially in the modern age, feels like.
See, I don't know. See, I think that's actually the complete opposite. I feel like once we're done, Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye will feel like one consistent volume of work that will have a beginning, middle, and end. There were stories before, there will be stories after, but it has a sense of containment.
Yeah. But in no way does it introduce to you Hawkeye as a character. Oh, this is where he got his stuff. Like, it is very clearly book 2.
I think that there are greater and lesser breaks. There are page breaks. There are chapter breaks.
Right.
There are volume breaks. Mm-hmm. And you get more and less finality depending on what size of a break it is. Mm-hmm. When you get to the end of Kingdom Come and you read the last page and then you close the book, you're like, that felt complete.
Right.
To a degree. And that's not to say that there can be no more stories with those particular iterations of those characters.
Mm-hmm. Especially since there's a direct sequel.
I feel like it set up some pins and it knocked them down, and I don't feel like I was missing anything.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying that, like, that was a very well-executed story. We all agree that Kingdom Come is very good. What I'm saying is, like, it doesn't matter if you attempt a finality in your storytelling or if you don't, because someone else is going to come back and mine those characters. So why not leave a couple dangling ideas?
Well, sure, you want to leave some dangling ends, but I feel like I watched Kill Bill Part 1, and I'm like, well, where's Kill Bill Part 2?
Well, I feel like...
Because she only killed half the people on her list.
Right. But I feel like in this story, that isn't... maybe that's just not the case to me, because I feel like the resolution occurs. Like, Ultron flies Unicron to Earth to blow the planet up with robo-zombies.
Ultron?
Yeah, robo-zombies, and, like, whether that's derivative or not is what it is.
Yeah, sure.
But he comes to Earth. Hank Pym's like, we got to shut this shit down. He envisioned, work out this crazy plan. Crazy plan goes off. Hank Pym sacrifices himself, very martyr moment. All the heroes are like, man, thanks, Hank Pym, you saved Earth. End of story. Like, that feels like a complete story to me. Whether I'm 100% satisfied with the way that he went about that, or the way that he, like, his plan, like, whether that was like, yes, dude, Hank, that was awesome. That was a great plan. There was no other way that could have worked, and you barely eked it out, and it was sweet, and that was the climax that we were all looking for, I think is a different argument, because I don't think it was. I think that there was a lot to be desired in that plan, in that defeating Ultron, and maybe that's where some of the discomfort with this series lies, is that, like, it wasn't actually that awesome to watch him overcome Ultron.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly didn't feel like the most... it certainly didn't feel like a denouement.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a sense of catharsis.
Yeah.
I felt
like something had been resolved.
Yeah, like, I wanted him to beat him in an awesome way, and he just beat him in, like, a mediocre way.
Yeah.
And, like, and that's not... that. I guess that's a different thing than...
Right.
The story had no resolution, because it had resolution.
Right. Well, and that's my whole thing, is that, yeah, so, like, actually, funny enough, the end result is not unappealing to me.
Right.
There's something about, like, gray area Pymtron that seems kind of fascinating to me.
I love it.
As a fixture of the new status quo of the Marvel Universe.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
But not by... So, like, I'm trying to think of an...
And Marvel has used the term original graphic novel very loosely in the past. Like, they are original graphic novels, but they're not meant to be self-contained.
Right. Well, and I think that's the problem with this one, is that it has that sense of... Like, but a good example for me is Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Beginning, middle, end. Clearly not the beginning. Like, clearly you're coming in midstream to a large series of events. But it felt good as a... You know, it was series 29 of, you know, Spider-Man's ongoing 50-season run. Like, I got to the end of it, I was like, that was a good season.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. What might have happened after or before, I can leave to other things. This felt like... Well, I mean, like watching the first episode of a series. And I think that's where it is. It's like, I don't dispute the... I think that, like, the...
Again, though... Ultimate or Superior Spider-Man was 30 issues, and this was 4.
Right. Well, but that's the thing, is that most of the time when we're consuming something like this, we have a solid sense of whether or not... I think this is the Four Eyes issue in real time. We don't have the benefit to know whether or not it was supposed to be more or is going to be more. We just know that it is, and I think how much of it is will determine how... And I think this is what Toby was saying before, and it's just occurring to me now, is we'll put it ultimately in a... on the scale of 1 to 10, whether it's a 6 or an 8. If there's 2 more volumes and they really flesh this out, then maybe Toby and I will wheel back and be like, this was an 8. But if it's like, this is it, and it's only the first 4 issues of Four Eyes, then it's kind of like...
I guess if I could put it this way, I feel like I'm putting together a 1,000,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And I've got all of these pieces, and I've put together different pieces of the puzzle in different places. And I've got this, like I've got some edge pieces and I've got some corner pieces, and I can see part of the picture. And I've got this one block of puzzle pieces that all fit together and form most of a section of a part of the picture. I can, like, see it very clearly.
Right.
But I can't figure out where in the puzzle it connects to everything else. Or if it even does, or if somebody accidentally put in part of a different puzzle.
Right. But does that...
And that is disturbing to me.
Well, it's...
Sorry.
Go ahead, Brant. I can't walk on that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's that goddamn J.J. Abrams mystery box thing that I know Toby and I share a kind of a disdain for, or maybe it's Joe and me. But J.J. Abrams has this thing constantly where it's like, you don't know what's in the mystery box. Like, what is red matter in Star Trek? What is the thing that's in Alias? What is this? Like, it's that sense that there are things that are being kind of artfully obfuscated from you for a distinct purpose, and you may or may not ever discover them. And this is one of those times, and I think that can be compelling, unless it doesn't resonate with you. And so I think that's where I'm suddenly like, that's it. Well, like, there's some aspect of this story where it's like there's more to it, or it's this thing, or but you don't quite get it. And you're not, and I think I'm really internalizing that whole Axel Alonso thing, where it's like, it doesn't make sense now, but it will. It's like, for fuck's sake, like, I don't need to have a 36-month, for lack of a better term, cock tease about what the new Marvel status quo is going to be. Right. Either publish your damn events or get on with it, but don't be like, here's a graphic novel. It's a full story. Oh wait, it's not really.
Like,
yeah. I think two things about that statement. One, graphic novels do not, by their definition, have to be a complete story.
No. You're
And
absolutely
I
right.
think that sets a bad precedent by assuming that it's a graphic novel. I'm going to be able to get a beginning, middle, and end, and everything will be resolved. Like, that's not how trilogies of films work. That's not how
and you can
seasons of
see-
TV shows work. They do have beginning, middles, and end, but sometimes they're not satisfying until you watch the second or third or fourth. And these original graphic novels at Marvel, I believe, are a testing ground to original graphic novel series, ongoing original graphic novel series, in which it's like every year we put out
Like
5 or
Earth
6.
One.
I think that would be 100% awesome.
When I think they're
I would
testing
love
that.
for that to be a thing.
I think
Yeah.
the problem is not knowing.
Right,
Right,
and
well,
that's the
and-
thing. I
and
feel like I got The Empire Strikes Back, and I have no idea if I'm ever going to get Return of the Jedi.
Right. And
Although you could watch Empire and not necessarily. Well, maybe.
no, it's just because it leaves with like, and then what, right? And but
Star
like,
Wars ends well, but
But I think that's going back. I think that's like kind of inherent in the way that they like to write modern comics, whether I agree with it or not. And two, like the puzzle analogy. To me, it's like reading a mystery book that doesn't have the resolution. Like, if you read a crime fiction novel or a mystery novel and you never found out who the murderer was, like, there's a part of that that would be really unsatisfying.
Right.
But if the journey was good enough, like, I think you could still enjoy it.
And that's where I'm at.
Right.
I enjoyed this, but I feel really conflicted about it.
Right. And I feel like, to me, who is not a Hank Pym fan, who's not an Ultron fan, who's not a Vision fan, who's not very primarily an Avengers fan even, like, I kind of knew I would be dissatisfied going into it. And so I read it and I was like, that was a thing I read. And then I put it down, and I was not as let down by the fact that it didn't have a resolution, because I didn't expect it to like meet my needs as a story anyway.
Sure.
So
Oh, go ahead. No.
Okay. So I feel like I'm coming from this from a very different point of view, because I expected to be annoyed by it and then just be like in this conversation where I didn't really care one way or the other, and then just have to be like, yeah, the art was good, or whatever. I really enjoyed this story, and I found the ending really satisfying, because the Twilight Zone episode, I can't talk, Twilight Zone feel to it, like that ending where you're like, oh my god, what's going to happen? And like, that was satisfying to me.
Yeah.
Like, thinking up these different situations, and where Hank Pym Tronbot is floating in space, struggling with himself. He's been hit by like a ray of love and has to deal with these feelings. Like, that's really cool to me, and I really enjoyed it.
Especially for me, in context of what happens in space in the Marvel universe. Like, knowing that he's not floating in a vacuum that has no other characters in it, but that in the next story he could meet up with the Silver Surfer or
Rocket Raccoon and Groot.
just anything. Like, stuff happens in space.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, putting it in that context, it actually reminds me of what actually happened with Adam Warlock.
yeah.
Because he like shows up in his first appearance, and at the end of his first appearance, he rockets off into space.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's gonna, like, are we ever gonna see him again? Like, what's going on with him? All of this stuff. And you don't like get that until the next time that he shows up, which was like 3 years later. And he meets up with Thor, like out in space.
And I think that there's a certain amount of seeding that's being done at Marvel where they're just like, all right, let's take a step back from the old continuity, kind of do this new thing. Here's a ton of new ideas. And this is one of those new ideas.
Yeah.
And it just is going to be fodder for future writers to come in and go, hey, remember that Ultron story where like Hank Pym's now like part of Ultron? Let's go back to that. And that it will get resolution at some point. And I understand where you're coming from. I also feel like I enjoyed the character study more than I thought I was going to. Like, I've always been a big fan of AI in stories, and just like the relationship between like, what does it mean to be alive? Anytime a robot is like, did I do good? And then like blows up is the saddest thing ever, in my opinion. I don't want to spoil too many things, but just like, I've been reading Descender lately, and that story like makes me cry almost monthly that it comes out. There was only 2 issues so far. I think I've almost cried during both of them.
I
just
only
'cause
read the first one.
it's just like, little boy robot, like, what happened to
alone.
my family? And it's sad. And so I love Astro Boy. I loved that element of Pluto when we read Pluto as
Oh yeah, I loved that in Pluto.
it's just like I like the idea of AI as life, but AI is life that like doesn't quite know how to be alive and is trying to meet someone else's expectations for what it means to be alive. Because like the AI doesn't question itself, and it's not like, am I alive? It's really asking, do you think I'm alive? Am I doing life right by you? And I always find that relationship like kind of heartbreaking.
Well, I think that's what's so interesting about this story is because it really is about like creator and progeny.
Yeah.
Like parent and child. This idea of the child looking up to the parent and going, what do you expect of me? Like,
Right.
you are my model for what I'm supposed to be. But with the AI, like, they're born sort of mature or with like an adult's mentality, but they don't have like the emotional context to know how to deal with any of that.
Right.
And so it goes in this like very weird place where they're like, you say these things, but then you do these things, and the different pieces of input that I'm getting, you don't match up.
Right.
And that's like where the tragedy comes in.
Yeah.
And like you really do get a sense of Ultron, like, you created me to create order, but humans are the most disordered thing. Like,
Right.
you are creating the problem that you created me to fix.
Right.
So I can't fix it unless I kill all of you, and you tell me that's bad.
Yeah, like I don't understand why you're not on board with this kind of a thing. Yeah, like it's a classic trope, the machine overlord type stuff where
Yeah.
you just have this robot that is like, look, the fastest way to make the world a better place is to get rid of the thing that sucks,
Kill all humans.
which is humans. Get rid of them all. And I like that. And I specifically like that in a superhero setting where it's like these robots are crazy technologically powerful because of all of the technology of that world that exists. There are guys that can literally punch through planets that are fighting this kind of stuff. I mean, maybe not in the Marvel universe, but can punch stuff hard. And fly and shoot laser vision and work as a team. And they're used to being able to overcome like really simple problems. Like, that bad guy wants to kill the world, let's stop him. And Ultron poses a slightly more complicated problem.
Yeah.
Specifically because he's kind of one of theirs, too.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things from my perspective that Grant Morrison does, or within the space that he operates, he has these ideas of like mimetic weapons, like self-replicating ideas that can be weaponized and become hostile. And I like the idea of Ultron as kind of this like, it's an idea that won't die.
Yeah,
And how do you punch an idea?
right.
And trying to deal with him from this perspective of you, like, your axioms are so incredibly twisted that you think that you're doing this good thing, and yet it's turned so horrible. And how do we combat that without just punching you? Because it's not your fault.
Well,
It's not that you're evil per se. It's just that you're so incredibly twisted. We don't know how to deal with you.
and I think it's a very mirror relationship with humanity where it's
Yeah.
like, wow, you're doing all these terrible things, but you think you're right, so that makes it okay. And like, it's a reflection of humanity in my mind, where it's like, you're on this planet and you're doing all of this stuff that by all logical sense is wrong, but because you've deemed it as correct, like the destruction of the environment, the way that you treat other people of your same species, like all of that is crazy. And so for me, you're the evil one. And so it's this very real reflection of not only humanity, but because Ultron was created by an Avenger, it's also a reflection of the Avengers.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I really sympathized with Ultron. Like, there was a part of me that actually wanted him to win.
Yeah.
Because it was just, yeah, you guys fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't have cast him out. You should have raised him and been a father to him. You can't just have a child and then not be a father.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, I felt like there were real stakes involved. reading, and I didn't know who was, like, how they were going to win or even if they were going to win. Because it was just like, I don't know. Ultron's got some pretty solid points, and he thinks that he's doing right, and he's just in his anger, you know? And it was interesting to sympathize with a villain in that way.
How did you feel about Vision's relationship with his own father, who is Ultron?
Well,
because it's an inversion of an inversion.
Yeah, and that was really interesting too, because it wasn't Ultron not being a father, it was Vision not being a son. It would, like, he didn't want anything to do with him except for to end him. And so that was really cool. Like, I think as a character study and just as development of characters I didn't know a lot about, it was great.
How excited are you for Avengers Age of Ultron next month?
Super excited anyway, but
now
more excited now.
Yeah.
I think working off of that point, the weirdest thing I think that this series did was conform to Marvel continuity. Because I feel like this very much could have been more related to the MCU.
Well, I think if they had done it in that way, it would have been confusing, because movie watchers would have gone like, oh, the Ultron movie is coming out, and here's this Ultron comic book, I should read this. And it would be similar, but it would be different, because it isn't like a adaptation of the movie.
Right.
So it'd be like the same characters,
Except
but not doing different things. Like, I think it would just have been confusing.
I think it's already a bit confusing as well, though, because if you pick this up and you're like, all right, cool, so Hank Pym invented Ultron, and then Ultron invented Vision, and Beast is an Avenger, and all this stuff, and then you go to the movie and you're like, all right, what happened? Because it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
So
Well, I feel like audiences are savvy enough at this point to recognize, like, you've got what's going on in the movies. The comic books have been going on for decades before that,
Yeah.
and there's just, things are different.
yeah.
But I kind of believe that you need to have some comics that are related to the movies.
Oh, sure.
And
well,
they
they
do
do
they
that.
do have a couple.
I think one of the things they could have done to help themselves make it very clearly different is the name.
Yeah.
By naming it Rage of Ultron. Apparently, last year, Remender was still writing this, and he got an interview. And originally, his working title for it was The Evolution of Ultron. It's like, you should, name it that.
That would have been better.
Yeah, I dig that, actually.
I do like that, like, completely outside of the context of Age of Ultron, which I've never liked because it's just Age of Apocalypse
With Ultron.
with Ultron.
Yeah.
I do like the title Rage of Ultron.
Yeah.
Like, that actually sounds like a cool title to me.
Yeah.
It does.
Um
And it has something to do with inside the story.
mhm.
That it's his rage that needed to be...
Yeah, I was going to
Tempered
say,
by
there's so many
love.
angry robots in this, but...
Yeah.
Ultron's screaming all the time, Vision's screaming a lot. I mean, I expect Sabretooth to scream.
and at the end, it's
And
all
call
about
people frail.
Which I had to dig into Wikipedia on that one because I haven't read Axis. So I was like, Sabretooth's on the Avengers? What the hell?
Yeah. We'll see how long that
I
lasts.
was like, well, they needed a Wolverine because they killed Wolverine.
Yeah.
Or they needed a new beast.
Well, he's
because
both.
there was an old beast.
He's Wolverine and Beast all rolled into one blonde package
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
with button chops.
I don't know.
The mutton chops are important.
I'm not a huge fan of the inversions.
There's only a couple running around now, right?
Well, it's Sabretooth and
Iron
Havoc
Man.
and Iron Man are the only ones who are still inverted.
What are the inversions?
So a bunch of people got their personalities flipped. If you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, they got their alignments reversed.
Okay, yes.
So Sabretooth is now good. Havoc is crazy, like mutant supremacist guy. And Tony Stark is an alcoholic asshole who does whatever the fuck he wants and gives no fucks.
So the same.
He's drunk Doom.
He's still
yeah, but he's
chaotic
no longer.
neutral.
He's off the wagon.
Yeah.
He's reverted to his twisted toy for theater
He
self.
went from chaotic good to chaotic evil.
One thing I did want to bring up with stories like this, and something I'm worried for about the movie Age of Ultron, is whenever you have like a villain that seems unbeatable, and they're like, I can make infinite replications of myself, and I'm smarter than you, and I'll do all this stuff, anytime they beat that villain, it always feels like just a Deus Ex Machina moment of whim.
The power of try harder.
Right, yeah. And it's very much like that DBZ moment of like, how did you beat the villain? We got stronger. How'd you do that? We just did. And you're like,
hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah. And
like, I'm not strong enough to beat him. You're stronger. You can be stronger. How do I be stronger? Try harder.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll win through the power of try hard.
But this felt like I'll win through the power of arbitrary invention.
Love. No,
Yeah.
power. This is not arbitrary invention. This was win through the power of love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that
Which
has
is
been Star
arbitrary.
Fox power forever. I mean, it's not like they just
made it
invented
up
a
for this
character to
one.
win. Like he's been around since the 70s.
Yeah. I felt a bit dissatisfied with the just like, and now we won. And I feel like Age of Ultron, the movie, is going to have a very similar moment, and I'm very concerned about it because I feel like everything I've seen in the trailers, all the preview images, is like, man, shit could not get any worse. How are they going to get out of this one? And I really hope there's a good answer for that. Because nothing will destroy that movie for me more than just like, and then they did the thing. And then it's over. And you're like, oh.
Congrats,
I have a guess,
dudes.
but I don't know if I should say it on the air, both because if I'm right, it would be kind of a spoiler, and if I'm wrong, I'll look stupid.
Well, then definitely say it. No, it's up to you. I mean,
Well, we saw that Baron Strucker has the mind gem from Avengers 1 in the end of Winter Soldier. We saw that he has that. And I think that they're going to essentially employ that to shut Ultron down, and that this will get the attention of Thanos or whatever, setting up for Infinity War. They're going to actually start bringing the Infinity Stones into play and going out and using them.
I 100% agree that in some way that Infinity Gems will be utilized in this. Whether Vision contains an Infinity Gem, they get the Tesseract Infinity Gem. There's the one in Loki. There's 8 Infinity Gems on Earth.
Well, there's
of the
there's 6
5
total.
There's
Well, we know where they're
2.
One of them's in the Nova Corps, and
Yes.
and then there's 12 of 6 on Earth for no reason.
No, not quite.
They're all on Earth.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
No, it's not. So there was
There's the Aether, which the Asgardians gave to the Collector. The Tesseract is in Asgard. The Mind Gem is on Earth, and the purple one's with the Nova Corps, which means that there's
one
on unaccounted
Earth?
for,
or one
and one on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I
One.
said, they're all on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All 12 of them.
Yep.
All right. Anything else to say about Age of Ultron before we move on to recommendations?
The art's beautiful.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
just getting ready to say that.
Art
Beautiful art.
is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it
love
almost
Opeña.
goes without saying that Jerome Opeña is a god amongst men when it comes to drawing pretty pictures of superheroes punching things.
Yeah.
Also, just zombie Ultron, great.
Yeah.
That looked awesome. It felt terrifying, and it was nice to have that zombie takeover feel, actually.
I did like super.
Feels scary.
The one other thing I will mention is I did like super confident Sam Wilson Captain America.
And Goddess Thor was pretty hot.
Yeah.
I
I
really dug
love-
the way Jerome Opeña drew her.
I love her character design.
I
Just like the
definitely agree.
the half mask with the hair.
I
It's,
did actually
dope.
the one kind of Hank, as much as I was kind of on the fence about the Hank Pym thing, the one thing that I really did like is when female Thor is when Thor, goddess of thunder,
Goddess
You-
Thor.
goddess
You can
Thor.
just call her Thor.
Yeah, no, it's hard though.
Because there's other Thors.
Because there's other Thors, and I've been, this isn't like me being sexist. it's just deprogramming 20 years of referring to Thor.
Well, it's also that there is literally another guy named Thor.
Odinson. He's just referred to as Odinson now, I think. Mm-hmm. He
As of his last couple appearances, he's been like, you can just call me Odinson. It's cool.
Yeah.
yeah.
His name's
there's an-
still Thor.
Well,
though.
right, it's
Right.
Like his birth name
Well,
is
that's
Thor.
the thing.
And there have been other
It's like when you have a
Thors.
coworker and they're named the same name as another coworker that you already had, so you just call them by their last name, but then to them it's confusing, and then when you meet their friends, they call them by the other name. It's like that.
Yeah.
Well, in all new Avengers, which is going to be coming out after Secret Wars,
Yes.
it's going to have Captain America and Nova, who are both named Sam.
Right.
Sam Wilson and Sam Alexander. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same. There's two people, both named Thor, both of whom are gods of thunder, who are on the Avengers. You still have to differentiate them somehow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And most easy is by their code name, of which neither Thor nor Thor, Goddess of Thunder, have a code name.
And once we actually know who
I feel that
Thor,
Goddess
of Thunder,
is kind of a good title. So if I'm addressing her as kind of royalty, it's Goddess Thor.
Well, like the way that we differentiate between Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Sam Wilson, Captain America, is we call one Sam Wilson and the other Steve Rogers.
No, we call him Captain America and call the other one Captain Falcon.
Sure. We don't know who the Goddess of Thunder's secret identity is. Once we do, we can just call her like blah, blah, blah
Freya,
Thor. Or Freya Thor, or Roz Solomon Thor, or whomever.
Right. Aunt May
versus Thor Odin's son.
It's absolutely Aunt May.
I want it to be Aunt May so badly.
Everyone should be Aunt May.
I kind of hope they don't reveal her identity until like she's in the MCU, and then they invent her identity, and then we find it out in the...
Wow, that'd be crazy. I didn't even think about that.
Because
both Thor, the comic book character, and I are convinced that it is someone that he's already met. Like, that's why he has the list that he's crossing off.
Yeah, and it's not his mom because she kissed him. At least we hope it's not.
Yeah.
Keep in mind some of the shenanigans that gods get up to.
Yeah, he crossed it off the list, and I was like, I don't know about that, buddy.
Your mom's a pretty clever character.
Maybe leave that one on there.
Related to him by blood.
Right.
Because in the Marvel comics, he's the son of Odin and Gaia.
Right.
So maybe she's down for some extended family shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Enough about Thor, Goddess of Thunder. Brant.
Yeah.
We're moving on to recommendations.
Yeah, well, let's move on.
I'm assuming that's... Don't start with you?
Don't start with me.
If you wanted to start with me, it's going to be Thor, Goddess of Thunder. I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Well, why don't we start out with our Patreon listener pitch?
I was going to save them for last, but sure.
I'm going to do them first. So, Tony has a listener pitch for us this week. And Tony has asked that we pitch Ministry of Space by Warren Ellis. And if you're not familiar with Ministry of Space, it's kind of like a 1 or 2 issue miniseries. Like, you buy the collection, it's pretty thin. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially Warren Ellis going back into the canon of post-war British science fiction. The stuff that he was reading when he was growing up, like in the 60s. Mm. And there's all this science fiction from that period of time where it's like, British space program or whatever, like rocketing off into space when the actual Britain was like fucking broke at that time. Like they couldn't even afford to feed their people. They had food rationing up through the 70s. Everybody was dirt poor. Like it was just terrible.
Well, they were rebuilding.
Yeah. And so he started with this idea of, we have all of this fiction with this idea of like a British space program and the British going out into space and having adventures. What would it take for that to have actually happened? And so he invents a alternate post-war timeline of the British space program, the Ministry of Space. And the story is about how that would come into play, both the good and the bad. It's a really interesting story. I'm personally have mixed feelings about it. I know it's been pitched a couple times on the show.
Yeah, Matt McGinnis pitched it way back when.
I feel like it's one of Ellis's more low-key works.
Still never read it.
Beautifully illustrated.
Do you remember offhand who does the art?
I don't, off the top of my head. I probably should have looked it up.
It's okay. Tony didn't look it up for us.
Maybe he did, and I just completely looked past it.
Sorry, Tony, if you did.
Sorry, Tony. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. It's got some of Ellis's tropes, but not a lot of the ones that you see commonly. So if you've read Fell or Transmetropolitan, it's a little bit outside of, I guess, his usual bailiwick.
When was this written? Do you remember?
I want to say around 2004. I'll look it up.
Okay. I had no reference for this, so. Very cool. Ministry of Space, Warren Ellis. And it's like a single trade, but it feels like maybe it's 2 prestige issues. Like at most.
Yeah, it's like a double length issue.
Yeah.
It's like 40 or 50 pages.
Yeah, he's done a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Ellis has.
Yeah.
2001.
Okay.
It's a 3-part series.
Okay.
Drawn by Chris Weston.
Cool.
Now I'm ready if you want to start.
Okay. Brant.
I'm pretty sure we haven't read this, and I don't know that it's been recommended. But if it has, I have a backup.
Okay.
Black Science by Rick Remender.
We already did it.
Damn it!
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When?
I know I
Episode
pitched it before.
91.
Yeah, we've
I wanna
actually
say?
talked about it on the show.
I can't remember.
See, this is what happens when you're not on every show.
However, if there's a second trade out,
there is.
There is.
There's
Then-
2 or 3 trades.
There's
okay,
2.
well, we do want to be catching up with ones we've done previously.
Issue 13 just came out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we only did the first trade, and I'd like to do more.
Well, fine.
Option.
I'll stick with it. Black Science, Volumes 1 and 2. Because I missed Volume 1. I've heard good things.
Episode 74.
Yeah, see, geez. It's forever ago.
That was 40 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Let's catch up on
Well,
some Black
and
Science.
That was almost a year ago.
We've often talked about with series like Saga, for example, or Prophet, where we talked about it early on in its life cycle, going back to re-examine it once more stuff is
Well,
out.
fine.
So-
Black Science, Volumes 1 and 2 by Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera.
With color by Dean White.
Yes.
Which, nothing against Dean White, who is amazing, but
I love him.
I saw the original black and white pages of Scalera's at Comic-Con, and they're fucking mind-blowing. Like, I wish that book was black and white, like, on a level that I didn't know I would ever wish a book was black and white. Because so much of what I assumed was done in the post-production process is actually done in his own inks.
That's incredible.
And it is unreal. Like, that book looks
Wow.
amazing in black and white. So while I hate it when DC does the unwrapped versions of books, because usually the art isn't quality enough to take the colors out, or I feel like it destroys the atmosphere of the book in some way, I really hope that Image either does like a digital black and white only version or like some kind of special edition
That would be
issues,
nice.
which would just be cool to look at. Sorry to step on your toes though, Brent.
It's all good.
I wanted to share that.
Dimension Knots. Onion of Space.
Yeah, it's a super great story. I'm very interested in it.
Yeah. Dimension Knots, is that what
If you want to know more about what we thought about Volume 1, go back to episode 74.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
Very
Okay.
cool.
Cade?
All right, so I was actually going to bring Thor, Goddess of Thunder, because she was awesome in this book, and I really want to talk about that first trade. But fuck you guys. Last week, I brought something that almost won, and I really want to talk about it, so I'm bringing it back. This is Scott Snyder and Jim Lee's Superman Unchained.
Well, I think I made the right choice because Joe wasn't here, which is the person I wanted to talk about that book with.
That is fair. But
in my defense.
yeah, so it's a New 52 story that is not really New 52 entrenched.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a step in the right direction for DC.
Heroic Superman.
Yeah. Something I was really looking forward to. Finally read it last week, and I really dug it.
Cool.
Now, it was not perfect by, like, Marvel means, but it's really good for what DC's done in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
Very cool.
Kayleigh?
So I brought Madame Xanadu by Matt Wagner, Amy Reeder Hadley, and Richard Friend. It follows Madame Xanadu, who kind of crops up in DC and Vertigo stories, sort of as this just insanely powerful magician, mystic, crazy, awesome person. But
DC Universe Online, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really have her own story.
She's had minis in the past.
Yeah.
This is her Vertigo title from 2008.
Yeah, this is her first Vertigo series, as far as I know.
And it follows her because she's essentially immortal with some stipulations. It follows her aging through different Vertigo and DC events and different like historical events, things like that. It's really cool.
And the Phantom Stranger is there.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of Vertigo and DC characters that show up.
And it has my favorite costume design of Death from Sandman in it.
Very cool.
So,
and this, unfortunately, is the last good Madame Xanadu series. Because after that, she's on Justice League Dark, and she's a terrible character in the New 52.
yeah.
So this book is awesome, but also makes me very sad that there's no more Madame Xanadu.
What it could have been.
Yeah.
And that's under the title Madame Xanadu Disenchanted. If you're looking for it.
Oh, so it is.
That's what it says on the spine.
They're like, no, it says Madame Xanadu Classic on the front.
No, it's saying that's a quote.
I know, I got that. Thank you.
Somebody said that it was classic. Anything else you want to say about it?
Nope.
Okay. For my own pitch this week, I brought a book that I saw at Emerald City and didn't buy because it was outside of my budget. But then I found it at our local used bookshop. So I am pitching Bad Houses by Sarah Ryan and Carla Speed McNeil, published by Dark Horse. And this is it's like a 150-some page OGN. And it's about these two families living in a small town in modern-day America. And the economy's kind of gone to crap. There's a lot of unemployment. And it's about these two kind of young adults meeting and their two families and the way they interact and the way that kind of lives go and the way that people grow up in small towns. One of the kids is this guy. He and his mom do estate sales for people who die. And then it's this girl who is a photographer, and her mom works at a nurse at the old folks' home in town. And it's just kind of about their lives and their interactions. And it's, again, I would call it a really cool character study.
It's like kind of a slice of life comic.
Yeah,
Cool.
very much so. Black and white. I really love Carla Speed McNeil's artwork, which is what got me interested to look at it in the first place. And it's a fun, interesting story, and it's a nice change of pace because I feel like we've been reading a lot of superhero stuff recently.
Yeah. Very cool.
So that's my pitch.
Okay, so we have 6 pitches and 5 people.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
But Chard hasn't made his pitch yet.
Pitched yet. So
Right. Okay.
So what is your pitch, Chard?
I brought an image book, and no surprise there. Rapidly approaching week 40 of the 52 weeks of image. And I don't want to call myself a Mark Millar apologist, but I will definitely say I don't have as much against the man as a lot of people do. I do feel like some of his stories are not that great. I've never read Wanted. I'll put that out there. The story that most people hate him for. I just skipped it. I can understand why people don't like him from stuff like Ultimates and whatnot, but I've always found at least parts of his stories to be in some way or another worth reading. This book, however, is by far and away the best thing he's ever written, hands down. Fight me. Like, this book is so much better than anything else he's ever written that I'm confused as to why he didn't just always write like this.
Old Man Logan.
No, it's an image book. It's called MPH, and it is 5 issues. It stands for miles per hour, obviously. And essentially, these criminals get a hold of a drug called MPH, which was developed by the government, that gives you super speed.
I thought this was My Pretty Horses.
Yes. My Pretty Horses, Volume 1 by Mark Millar. No. So these criminals get this drug, and it lets them... They have super speed. They basically all become the Flash. And this is a 5-issue mini kind of about what happens when you give people with maybe, I would say, not the best motivation in the world because...
Questionable morals.
this like supreme power. I think it brings up a lot of questions about like the nature of crime, why people go through the act of turning to crime, and it's also the only Mark Millar story I've ever read that has an amazing ending, like a fantastic ending. Like, he earned it. Stuff that I thought he was never going to touch again, he brings it back around in the ending and it's all tied up with a nice, tidy bow. Everything is resolved, and I was like, wow, that's new. That's a new step for you, Mark Millar, and I appreciate that. And actually, I read the first 4, and I was like, this is pretty fun. And I read that 5th issue, and I was just like, that was absolutely outstanding. Fantastic. So I highly recommend everybody goes and checks out MPH. Really fun story. There's a lot of speed tricks in it and stuff. Like, you would see the Flash like running up to kind of like Quicksilver in what is that, Age of Apocalypse? And what was the movie? Days of Future Past, where he'll like go move people into positions, and then like when he stops running fast, like they'll punch themselves in the face. Like, lots of kind of cool speed tricks like that I love from the Flash. And then also some cool time travel-y type stuff because of the nature of speed. And it's really fun. It's just a fun 5-issue series. So
Cool.
Check it out. But Brant, what would you like to vote for?
I kind of want to vote for MPH because I want to drive Toby crazy and make him read more Millar.
I honestly don't think you would drive Toby crazy with this one.
Well, maybe not. But I gotta.
No, I'm kind of crazy just from the description.
I gotta.
A little bit.
Really?
Yeah, a little hot under the collar.
Oh man, they got speed powers. That makes me so angry.
I gotta go.
The name Mark Millar just makes you upset.
It does.
Like, I don't understand that.
We can talk about it after.
I mean, I've had someone like microwave animals of mine that I don't hate as much as you hate Mark Millar. Not really. That's never happened to me. Sorry to anyone that's had an animal microwaved. Brant, what would you like to read?
We need some pro DC new blood, so I'm going to go for Superman Unchained.
Ooh. Hopefully Joe will be around because I want to talk to him about this.
Cade?
Black Science. I really liked. We read the first volume and it was not finished. I want to read the rest.
Kayleigh?
I'm going to vote for Bad Houses.
All right.
I'm going to take a lead from Tony. I'm going to vote for Ministry of Space.
Wow. I get to pick the book.
Again.
I think for like 3 weeks in a row.
Well, the system is inherently balanced to making that possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how that happened.
If somebody else voted last, they would be the one who's picking.
Yeah, I wonder how that happened.
The mystery.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Nobody will ever know.
Man.
Damn you, Toby.
Well,
you voted for Superman last week.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunate is I actually really wanted to read Madame Xanadu, which no one voted for.
Yeah.
And now I cannot vote for. Kelly Oakler of Out of the Fridge. This is one of her absolute favorite books. So it's really good. Man. Tough choices. Brant, what did you pitch?
I pitched Black Science.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, I was going to vote for Superman Unchained last week, and I chose Rage of Ultron because I was hoping that Brant would be here, and he was. So I also want to talk about Superman Unchained. So let's do it. Let's do 2 big superhero books back to back, and I'll vote for Superman Unchained. Hopefully we'll get Joe or Mannix around, my people I know that love Superman.
Definitely one of those things.
Yeah, somebody that likes Superman should be on the show.
At least one person, hopefully.
Hey,
I love Superman.
I love Superman. Joe's a convert to Superman because of me.
No, we know that. We know that, Brant. That's fine.
Stupid Batman fanboy.
But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you to all of our patrons and Patreon sponsors and our show sponsors and everybody in the live stream. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to everyone everywhere.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next week.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Me From the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title. But like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books.
the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.